Welcome to another episode of AI Talks with Chris and Nita. Today we're taking a deep dive into something really fundamental in our digital world, data serialization.
That's right. Yeah. If you've ever wondered how, all the digital bits of your life, like saved games, online transactions, how they actually manage to connect and stick around, this deep dive is definitely for you. We're going to unpack what data serialization really is, why it's so vital, kind of the invisible glue of modern tech, you could say. And we'll even touch on some of the popular formats you might actually run into.
Invisible glue. I like that description.
Yeah.
Okay, so for our listener, let's start right at the beginning. What is data serialization exactly?
Okay, so at its core, data serialization is really the process of translating complex data structures. Think objects, arrays, maybe the entire state of an application. Translating them from how they exist in memory, into a format that's easy to store or transmit. You're essentially turning a live dynamic software thing into a neat package. Could be a stream of bytes or maybe a text format people can read like JSON or XML. And then just as important, deserialization is the reverse, taking that package and perfectly rebuilding the original data.
Okay, so if I'm trying to picture this, it's a bit like packing a suitcase maybe. You've got all your stuff scattered around, clothes, books, whatever that's like the complex data in memory. You pack it neatly, maybe compress it into the suitcase. That suitcase is the serialized form, ready to go. And when you get where you're going, you unpack it all, put everything back so you can use it again. Does that kind of track?
That's actually an excellent analogy, yeah. And just like you might need a different kind of suitcase for different trips, different data situations often need different serialization methods, which brings us to why this is so important. It's not just some obscure technical thing.
Right, you called it the invisible glue. So let's dig into that. Why is this packing and unpacking so crucial for, our everyday digital lives?
Well, first big one is storage. Simple as that. Every single time you hit save on a document or like your game remembers where you left off, serialization is doing the work underneath. It takes that live state, the game, the document, and translates it into something that can be written to a file or put in a database. Without that step, poof, your progress would just disappear when you close the app.
So in fact, my Netflix queue knows what episode I'm on, or my bank app shows my balance. That's serialization, making sure things persist.
Exactly that, persistence. Then there's communication, super important. Think about when your phone sends a message or your web browser needs to get data from a server, like an API request. That data has to be packaged up efficiently to travel over the network. Serialization makes sure it arrives intact, understandable, no matter the network fuzz or where the server is. It lets different systems actually talk.
And that must tie into interoperability too, right? Because if you have systems from different companies, maybe even written in different programming languages, they need a common way to understand the data they're sharing. Serialization provides that.
Precisely. Spot on. Imagine a Java application needs to send data to a Python service, or maybe a JavaScript front end talks to a Go backend. Serialization gives them that neutral standard format for the exchange. And actually, here's an interesting side point. Versioning. When an app gets updated, how does it still read your old saved data?
Oh yeah, good question.
Well, many serialization formats are designed to handle that. They support something called schema evolution. It lets newer software understand older data structures. It stops everything breaking when developers release updates. It's kind of a silent feat of engineering, really.
Huh. I hadn't really thought about that old data working with new software. That's actually huge. And you mentioned caching and persistence earlier too, briefly.
Yeah, also vital roles. Caching is basically storing already processed, serialized data so you can get it back faster next time, makes apps feel quicker. And data persistence, as we touched on, just makes sure objects or data inside an application can survive, between sessions or even if the system restarts. It's fundamental to pretty much any dynamic, interactive digital thing we use.
Okay, so given how essential this is, what are some of the actual languages or formats that, make it happen? What does it look like in practice?
All right, so there's quite a few, and they all have different strengths and weaknesses. Trade-offs. Probably the most common you'll see, especially on the web, are text-based ones, like JSON JavaScript object notation. Super popular for APIs because it's pretty easy for humans to read. Then there's XML, Extensible Markup Language. It's older, very powerful for really complex documents, but it can be a bit wordy, verbose.
I've heard of YAML too. YAML ain't markup language, is that it?
That's the one. YAML's often liked for configuration files because it's designed to be even more human-readable than JSON, uses indentation.
Okay.
But when performance is absolutely critical, like every millisecond, every byte matters, then developers often reach for binary formats. Think things like protocol buffers or protobuf from Google or Apache Avro. Message Pack is another one. These are built for speed, small size, super fast processing, great for things like microservices talking to each other or handling massive amounts of data. The trade-off usually is that you can't just open one in a text editor and easily understand it.
Gotcha. So it's that classic balance. Readability for humans versus raw speed and efficiency for the machines makes total sense why there isn't just one single answer.
Exactly. It really depends on the job. So hopefully this deep dive shows it's not just some, abstract computer science idea. It's woven into almost everything you do online, which maybe raises a question for you listening. Next time you open an app and it loads your settings instantly, or a website pulls up live info, maybe think about the serialization happening invisibly behind the scenes. How might understanding that change how you see the tech you use every day? It really does underpin so much we just take for granted.
That's a really great thought to leave everyone with. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the fascinating world of data serialization.